Recognition, power, and influence is your birthright, and this podcast shows you how to get there. Welcome to episode number 212. As we enter into 2024, I am excited to share with you an interview that I did with Anderson Rooney. Erica is a Chief People Officer, and she's also an incredible thought leader. She is the author of Glass Ceilings and Sticky Floors that is set to come out any day now, and I'm so excited about this new book and this new opportunity for you to smash your own glass ceilings. In this interview, she gave us so many incredible tips to begin to break through that next level in your own leadership. But what I really, in particular, enjoyed about this conversation is the opportunity to hear from a C-suite executive who was also showing up as an incredibly powerful mentor and thought leader in her industry. And I want you to be able to listen and use that as an example of your own career path as you continue to look for role models and examples of what is possible for you. All right, let's get started. Welcome to Women Changing Leadership. I am your host, Stacy Mayer, and I teach you how to get promoted, get paid, and bring your whole self to the leadership table. I am on a mission to change organizations from the C-suite out, because women are the new face of leadership, and we are doing it on our terms. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Women Changing Leadership. I am your host, Stacy Mayer, and super excited to be here with you again this week. I'm really excited about today's episode. I am interviewing a woman who I was really struck with two things about her. Well, actually, okay, now I'm thinking of five things that I'm struck with, but we'll get into all of the nuances and hopefully you will be as excited about the episode as I am. But one of the things is that she is still an acting Chief People Officer, not a full-time, everything Chief People Officer, but she is going 150% into her thought leadership. She wrote a book that comes out at the beginning of 2024. I'm so excited. She's going to be showing more and more women how they can break the glass ceilings. And so when I was first introduced to her, I thought she was a coach. I was like, oh, she's like me. She coaches women to get promoted or whatever. And then I was like, no, she's a Chief People Officer. She is inside the system, infiltrating the system, working from the inside out. And you know, if you've been following me, that's my tagline, is changing this from the C-suite out. And that is exactly what she is doing. So I'm super, super excited to hear and learn from you, Erica. Thank you so much for being here today.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm so pumped to be here. And yes, I am full time. I always tell everybody, like, my 9 to 5 is my Chief People role. And then all other hours of the day is all the other things that I do.
Yeah, exactly. Because she didn't mention that she's a mom, right? And, you know, it's like there is the all other things. And so I'm just like, I really do like you a lot.
Oh, I love it.
All right, let me give a more formal bio, which is also very well written, by the way, in this informality. Another thing I really appreciated about Erica is her open bookness, the fact that she just says it like it is. She's so authentic. And I'm just going to read this off to you. Erica Anderson Rooney is a keynote speaker, a Chief People Officer, a gender equality crusader, and a hustler by nature. Her book, Glass Ceilings and Sticky Floors, will be out for pre-sale soon and available for purchase in Q1 of 2024. She is also the host of the podcast From Now to Next, the podcast that empowers women to climb the ladder and smash the glass ceiling. Oh, let's do it. I'm so excited.
Dive in, yes.
Yeah. Why don't we just start with some of your personal secrets to success?
Where do I start with that? The first thing is, number one, that success is not linear. And number two, recognizing that your definition of success is going to change so many times. And I remember when I got my very first job after college, thinking that I had found the career I was going to retire from, which, of course, you know, years later is hysterical, right? Like, go figure. The person just getting out of college is like, I know what I'm retiring from. but I was really that passionate about it. However, one of my core values is growth. And very quickly I realized like, okay, I'm in my 20s. I can't retire from this today. So I kind of started shifting what I found value in growth. And I just kept kind of shifting and molding and shifting and molding. And then I landed in the C-suite. And you're like, I've made it, right? I'm in the C-suite. But then it's like, but is this all there is? And that's when it's like, no, that's not all there is. There's so much more that you can do. It's infinite possibilities. And that's when I really started diving into coaching with executive women and keynote speaking and pouring myself into all of this work on gender equality, because I am in a position of power where I can affect change. And so now it's like pouring myself into all of that. And, you know, I don't think we're going to see full gender equality in my lifetime. So that will always be a marker of success for me. But like, it's going to change from now until infinity for me. So for sure, know that it's always going to change.
What was that early retirement plan?
Oh my gosh, I was a corporate wellness trainer for Verizon. So I thought, this is amazing. I can wear spandex to work all day. I'm working out for a living and I'm helping people reach their health and fitness goals, which was super cool. And I loved it. And now being a chief people officer, looking back, I can recognize that my why is that I love to help people. And that's why I translated into HR, climbed the ladder to land into the chief people officer role. But Stacy, the higher up the ladder you go, the farther you are away from the people. And I really recognized that when I was at the top and I just felt so disconnected from the people, which is when I really started saying, okay, how can I use this position that I have to really help people and really help women? And that's when I dove into all the work that I do, helping women get into positions of power and stay there.
Wow. You know, one of the things that I know this isn't 100% true, but maybe it is that I like to show women how they didn't just land in the C-suite. And I think for a lot of people, their promotions up to a certain point start to feel like landing, right? Like, I just found myself. I just landed here. It just happened. And we all know that's not exactly true. There are things that you did along the way. Or perhaps you're like, it was a landing. I just was like, what? How did this happen? So I would love to hear from you what it was that you did, what your journey was, how you landed in the C-suite. Since you said that word a few times, it kind of stood out to me.
Landed. Well, I will tell you, I did not land there. I worked very hard to get
there. Exactly.
What I will tell you is that I don't think that I ever expected to be a C-level leader. It just didn't enter my mind or my realm of possibility. Even though I saw myself as a super successful person and like one that always chased growth, that just seemed very far away to me. And so I actually had I had a career that I loved very much. I was very passionate about the company that I worked for. I was bought in, and I had leadership that really advocated for me, that brought me into the room. And then we actually had a change in leadership. And with the change in leadership, had a change of view of my role as a successor for certain things. And it was actually really devastating. And I woke up one day, I was still employed by this company. They weren't going to fire me or lay me off, but I knew deep in my bones that I no longer belonged there. And I didn't know what to do. And I really felt so stuck. And I spent many of my lunch hours crying in what I call my crying car. I would go out to my lunch and I would cry because I was like, I don't belong here. I'm a failure. What am I doing? I'm never going to find another job that I love. And I spent a few weeks doing that. And then I got to a point where I was like, okay, Erica, you always have the power of choice and you don't have to stay here. Like, you don't have to stay here crying in your car every day, right? And it's hilarious how we have these epiphanies later on. And that's when I decided that I was going to reach out to my network. I am a huge advocate for networking your ass off all the time because you never know when you're going to need it. So I reached out to someone in my network and I said, hey, a couple of years ago, I remember you were looking for a head of HR. Is that still a need for you? And they said, you know what? Let's talk. So they hired me on and they brought me into the executive team as an SVP. And then spent some time in there. And then I was elevated to the C-level role. And it was such a big jump from where I was as a senior level manager in a global organization to a chief people officer that I was kind of like, oh my God, how did I get here? But it was because of all the time that I had spent the years before networking, growing my knowledge base, working on my skills and abilities, taking classes, learning from people, asking for stretch projects. Like I intentionally set myself up to grow and to be successful. I just didn't know for what role that would be until I did.
Yeah. I love that. And you also did something with the power of choice, right? There was something in you in that car from a mindset perspective that, you said 2 weeks. And I was like, wow, that's not very long. But, and a lot of times that's what I remind my women when they feel like it doesn't get easier, right? So you have a level of success. I mean, and success on many levels, not just the title changes. Because when I'm working with women, they're having other multiple dimensions of that success, right? They're getting that voice. They feel like they finally have the network, right? There's lots of pieces to it. And then it comes crashing down overnight. And then they're like, why am I here again? This is so hard. I'm back in my car. And I'm like, no, you're only in your car for 2 weeks now. The last time when I spoke to you, you were in your car for 6 weeks or 3 months or 5 years, right? And so tell us a little bit about your mindset and view on the world that allows you to see the world as a choice, right? That you always have choices.
Well, I will say it was not always like that. And
exactly.
Yeah, I have been through, and actually my book that you talked about, I go very, very deep into what I call my SNAP method, right? Because we're always told, snap out of it, just snap out of it.
Yeah, exactly.
So I actually created what I call the SNAP method, which is all about stopping and noticing the physical sensations in your body. So for me, I was sitting in my car. I could feel, the tears welling up from my stomach, the red rash on my neck and chest coming up and the tears coming out. And then you have to be able to name whatever it is that you're feeling that is keeping you stuck in that car. And for me, when I got really deep and I got really quiet, I was feeling like a failure. And I was like, why does this person not see me the same ways that other people did? Somehow I failed. This is my fault. And then when I could actually name it, I could ask and answer, which is the SNA, stop, name, ask, answer, some really serious questions for myself that only I could answer, right? Number one is this helpful? Obviously not. Crying in your car every day at lunch is not helpful. And then, is this true? And I really had to think, could you have done anything differently? And yes, I could have. Would it have changed the outcome? Probably not. And I asked myself deeper and deeper questions about what I wanted out of my life, what was successful for me, what could I do differently? And then when I was really questioning, what do I do next? It was, often we go to what's the worst that could happen. I really tried to flip that. And this is where the P comes in, the pivot from what's the worst that could happen to what's the best that could happen. And in this situation where I'm in my crying car and I was asking myself, what's the worst that could happen? Well, I could stay in a dead-end job where I'm not appreciated. I don't feel like I belong and I'm crying every day. Or I could pivot it to what's the best thing could happen. And guess what? For me, I went all the way to the C-suite and I reached a level of success that I would never have done otherwise. So I really believe in taking all of those steps in the SNAP method and pivoting your mindset to take ownership of what you can control, because you do have control over your mindset and you have control over your choices. And when you marry those two things together, your possibilities are endless.
Thank you for sharing that. That's so good. I think that sometimes we just kind of share these experiences because we've worked our entire life to get into that SNAP place. And then we forget, to share the story of where it started. And so I really appreciate that. That's really great. Thinking about the woman who you connected with, I'm really drawn to her. And now knowing the end of the story or the middle of the story, we'll call it the middle because it's only just the middle or the beginning or who knows, right? We have so much more to go in the life of Erica. I really see her, and I don't know her, I don't know you, as a pivotal yes in your life, right? Let's see, why don't we talk? Bring her over here. And then a series of other yeses that kind of happened after that. Because looking back on it, it's I'm so glad they didn't appreciate you, because if you didn't move over here, then we might not be talking about your next book, right? So it's just there had to have been something that shifted either through that leader or maybe multiple leaders over the years at your current organization. Can you tell us a little bit more about that shift?
I think for myself is I've always believed in myself, and I've always been okay with doing things scared. It's taken me, I've gone from it takes me a really long time to do something scared to shorter and shorter amounts of times. But I'm still scared when I step into the unknown, and I'm still nervous about things, but I just always make this conscious choice to do it and to go after it. And I think that I've been very fortunate that I've had positive female role models in my life, but I've also had very amazing male advocates who have taught me things about corporate America that I would not have seen as a woman in corporate America. And I think through the combination of those two, and for one of my male advocates, his name is Andy Parker, and he was one that encouraged me to apply for like this role that was like 3 levels above where I was. And I remember looking at him like, you have lost your mind. I don't know what you're talking about. And he was like, Erica, it's not always about getting the role. Sometimes it is about putting yourself in front of people so that they know that that's what you're about, that you're about growth, that you're about taking on more in leadership opportunities. And no, you might not get this role, and that's okay, but you're going to be seen by other people in a different way because you set yourself up for this interview. And I was like, like that is like, thought of that. And it's so interesting. Again, men and women look at power very differently and how you look at it, and versus how I was looking at it and what I was capable of. So that was one of the big yeses for me in a series of yeses, was saying yes to, I'm going to go ahead and apply for that role. And I didn't get it, but it put me in a really great position. And it gave me this level of confidence of like, I can sit in front of a CEO of a multi-million-dollar global company and ask for something and have him be impressed by me. Like, that's me. And I think that one experience then gave me the confidence to reach out to another CEO to say, hey, it's time for me to move on somewhere else. Do you need somebody? And ever since then, I take these small steps, and going into the coaching world and the keynote speaking world, I'm sure you know this, but getting up on any stage is nerve-wracking. Like, I love talking to people and I love talking in front of people, but when you're standing in front of a room of 1,000 people, it is scary. But you have to say yes. But every time that you do it, it gets a little bit easier.
I'm curious now about your transition and opening up into the world of coaching, thought leadership, keynote speaking. I think for a lot of leaders, they approach it as a more of a next step, not intertwined with where they currently are and sharing their current experiences and kind of what that looks like. Yet the women who really embrace that very early on, not like when they make it to the C-suite or when they get the promotion and then all of a sudden they're going to share about that story. They're willing to share the journey and willing to share what they've learned along the way, have so much more success. They actually receive promotions faster. They are starting to be seen as a thought leader. People take them seriously. They're like, oh, they have something to say in the industry, right? There's just so many ripples that happen as a result of putting your thoughts out into the world. So what did that transition or integration, I guess would be a better word, look like for you when you started to be able to share some of your ideas and what you were learning?
It was a little bit natural for me being in a chief people officer role and really stepping into gender equality. And that was a big space for me because I am a mom. I've got 2 little kids. They're 5 and they're 8. So like we are in it. And I remembered thinking back to my early days in my career, how I used to feel like I had to lie to my male boss about leaving work early to take care of a kid, or because I wanted to get to their school play, or whatever the thing was. I remember feeling like I had to lie. And when I was in this C-level position, I had this thought of like, I don't ever want somebody to feel like that on my team. I don't want anyone to feel like they have to lie to me for whatever reason, whether they want to take their dog to the dog park, go see their kid, or get some Botox. It does not matter. They have a personal life that is valuable and should be taking precedence over work, right? Like, we are people before we are employees. And so I really recognized how different that was for women in the workplace. And I recognized how different it was for me as a mom versus my husband, who is a man. And, nobody ever asked him when he had to travel, who was taking care of the kids. he's never been asked, like, are you sure you want to travel that much? Like, what are you doing with your kids? And like, I can't believe you do that. And like, he just never had any of those questions. And it was really starting to bug me. And I was like, I'm going to go all in on this because I have a little girl. And I was like, I want her to be able to be whatever she wants to be, but not feel like she is constantly pulled into two different directions, right? Like as women in corporate America, we are told to speak up, but not too loudly. We're told to lean in, but not too far. We are told to be assertive, but not too much because then you're a boss and you're too bossy. And so it's just this constant juxtaposition. And I really started doing a lot of research about the nuances of being a corporate woman in America. And I was like, yes, me too on all of these things. And I was like, I'm going to do whatever I can with my position of power to drive change in my organization and as a coach for people in positions of power to help them drive change in their organizations.
Mm-hmm.
But I also believe that it starts internally, right? Like with a pay gap for women of 132 years and a gender leadership gap of 150 years, we're not going to see that. But we can start doing stuff to affect change in our personal lives to get there, right? For me, those gaps don't exist. I out-earned my husband and I'm in the C-suite. But it's because I've been very intentional with my actions and my choices and my mindset that I can break that barrier for me. And if I can work with other women in the coaching world and just by giving keynotes and doing all of those things, I can empower them to do the same thing and then effectively close the gap.
Have you been able to, as I heard you talking, it's one thing if you were a chief people officer, you had these beliefs, you understood the messaging that you wanted to get out to your organization, right, to your leaders internally, and you just talk to them all the time about your values, and this is what I think, and I believe in this, and this is what we should do, and this is the culture, right? And I see a lot of leaders do that. They'll apply these amazing value systems to this like small area. And then as I heard you talking, there's so much power in shifting that narrative to the world, right? Like just like looking up. And so spreading that message, every single person in your organization hears it, right? Like they all hear it. And actually they can hear it better when you're not talking at them, right? They're like, wow, she really stands for something. I hear what she's saying. Maybe I should think about that. Maybe I should ask for support, right? Or a raise. Maybe I should understand what's happening in the world, right? Like all of those things are so much easier to hear when you put it out into the world rather than just kind of keep talking to the people to change. So I'm curious from you if there have been any surprises or if you have noticed that connection as you have broadened your messaging outside of your organization.
I will tell you one of the best surprises that I had because I talked to my team and I talked to my organization, and I always say you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink, right? Some people will, some people won't. But I put a TikTok out there. I will embarrass myself on TikTok from time to time about how to effectively ask for a raise. And of course, I was inspired because we were in the middle of annual review time, which then leads to increased time and all of this. And I'm going through all of this, and someone on my team came to me with exactly every step that I outlined in my TikTok completed. And I was like, what's going on here? And she was like, well, I want to read. And I was like, let's go over it. And we went over it. And I actually then went back to my drawing board and moved some funds around to allocate her more, not because she watched my TikTok and did all these steps, but because she was able to effectively show me why she should be getting more money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the reason you said the steps was because it effectively shows why you should be getting more money.
Yes. And it wasn't that I couldn't give her everything she wanted, but she certainly got more than I had originally slated her for.
Right.
And part of that was like, number one, not every manager knows everything that you're doing all the time. And when they're managing a bunch of people, they can often forget. Should they know everything about you? Absolutely. But realistically, managers forget things. They're people. They don't necessarily remember all of the reasons. And she went in and she clearly outlined it and she showed me market data and she listed out her accomplishments and all of these things. And I looked at it and I was like, damn, yeah, okay, you're right. I think you're right. You do deserve a little bit more. So I had to go back to the drawing board of my budget and kind of move some things around. And I was like, I'm going to give her more than what she would have gotten. And then, though, I went back and I told her that because I wanted her to believe that because of what she did, she got more money. And I wanted her to know that the power started with her coming to me with information.
Yeah, that is so good. And, and back to that idea, I could imagine that a chief people officer giving a message just internally, right? So we're playing small here. You would never have some all hands meeting where you're like, how to negotiate a raise, right? Like you can't do that. And then everybody knocks on your door or whatever. That's not even the problem. The problem is just it's just not really how it works. But you can make a TikTok video and people can watch it. And then I'm thinking about your other mentor that you mentioned earlier, who he said just applying for the raise. So this woman who watching a TikTok and taking that step already set her up for you seeing her differently. And then she laid out her case study or her business case, and it was all set, done.
Absolutely.
Amazing.
Absolutely. And I think it allows people to connect dots for actions that I take internally when I follow them externally.
Yeah, I like that.
I've got a fabulous background behind me that you see, but reality is I work in a very dirty playroom. There's toys everywhere. There's gym equipment. This is my home. I do not have a nice background up when I do company meetings. I have the bean bags out. My dog is there. It very much encompasses who I am, which is a mom first. And I let the kids come in and out during meetings and things like that because I want my team and my company to see that I'm a mom first. Now, I do that intentionally so that my people know that I'm a mom first. But if I don't say that somewhere, they might not recognize it.
Right.
I will go on to LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, and I will post about I am a mom first and I believe in people first values. And that is why I show up with my kids in videos after school because they're home and I work in my home, and I embrace those changes so that other people can do the same thing. And then people start to see it in my company and they're like, oh, you know what? Yeah, when Erica's kids were on break, they were in the room for that company meeting. Okay, we do believe in family first. We are about the family. I'm not going to get in trouble if my kid shows up. And it just gives them that sense of security. But if I hadn't posted about it on LinkedIn, they might just be like, well, Erica's got her kids running around in the background. This is crazy, but I do intentionally.
Yeah, exactly. And I think so many of us as women are always making intentional choices, but nobody knows why, right? Exactly. And so that's just such a great example. Now let's talk a little bit about your book. At the time this interview comes out, your book's going to be out very soon after. I recommend it. I haven't read it, but I just knowing you and what we've talked about, but now I want to sell everybody else on it. So what is this book about? How did it come to be, all the things?
Talk about never thinking I'd be in the C-suite. I definitely never thought I'd be writing a book, but here we are. And it just kind of came to me organically. And so I have my podcast From Now to Next. I started talking with all of these women about what I call sticky floors. And sticky floors show up like limiting beliefs, imposter syndrome, perfectionism, fear, and burnout. But they also show up in toxic behaviors, toxic relationships, things like that. So too much wine on a Wednesday or too much social media, not prioritizing health and wellness and sleep. And all of these things impact women and they hold us back from busting through the glass ceiling. So what I do is I actually take the SNAP method that I talked about earlier and I walk women through all of these sticky floors that I've seen time and time again in my executive coaching and in my podcasting world. And we talk about if you struggle with perfectionism, here's why it shows up for women the way it does. And here's how you can bust through it. And we apply the SNAP method and we move through it. But all of those things, it's not to say that it doesn't apply to men, but it applies to women so differently. So I really wanted to showcase how it impacted women and what we can do to break free from them and then achieve infinite possibilities, right? And I do this, I'm the prime case study, right? I've struggled with every single limiting belief that is in that book. And I've talked to every single woman and every woman that I've talked to has said, I still struggle with these. And I've struggled with all of these. And the thing is we never really break free from them. We only get better at recovering from them. And so I wanted to empower other women because it empowered me so much to hear all of these stories from the women that I work with. And so it's all in a book. And if you struggle with limiting beliefs or, too much wine on a Wednesday and, maybe being in a relationship that's not great for you, it's the book for you because it's all about breaking free from these sticky floors to bust glass ceilings and achieve infinite success.
I want to hear one of the stories. So we've heard about the SNAP method. That's how we get out of it. But tell us to share with us.
Do you want someone I've coached? Or do you want
what comes to mind?
Stories. Oh my
God. Anything that comes to mind.
I will tell the one that comes to mind is honestly, it's for me, and it was my sticky floor of wine. Like, I grew up in a culture where we drank for every reason. We drank when we were happy. We drank when we were sad, to celebrate, to grieve, all of these things. And then COVID hit and my wine consumption skyrocketed as my stress skyrocketed. And I felt so stuck and I felt just stressed to the max and I didn't know what I could do about it. And so every night I'd sit down and I'd pour myself a glass of wine and I would wonder, why do I feel this way? And it was just this same pattern on repeat. And it wasn't until I made this decision where I was like, you know what? I'm tired of feeling like crap. I feel like I look like crap. I feel like I'm fuzzy. I'm not sleeping well at night. That I said, I'm going to cut out the wine. And I quit drinking. And that's when my executive coaching practice took off. That's when I got really clear about my core values. That's when I started landing paid speaking gigs. And it's like, that's when my thought leadership really came into like my peripheral vision and I could really start acting on it. And it took me a while to recognize that, to put the two and two together. And now it's a sticky floor for me. That's not a sticky floor for everybody, but I definitely recommend people try it if they're feeling stuck and they see this pattern of having wine every night and feeling stuck. And so it encourages people to look in places you never really recognized. Because what I will also tell you is I had one woman who talked about the sticky floor of perfectionism, and she would tell me, and I never thought I was a perfectionist. Let me say that first. I have a messy floor. You know, I don't care if things are perfect. I have dents in my car. I'm not a perfectionist. But this woman started talking about how she felt that if she did not do 30 minutes of intense cardio a day, followed by 30 minutes of like a intense workout, that the workout wasn't worth it. It wasn't good enough. Why do it? And as she's telling me this, I'm going, me too. Me too. And I'm starting to see how it's showing up in my life. And I was like, oh my God, I never knew I struggled with perfectionism, but I do, but only when it comes to working out. Mm-hmm. And way back in the day, I was a personal trainer. So it helped me uncover this sticky floor that I didn't even know I was struggling with. And now that she shared this story with me and I can recognize this piece of myself in her, I have been able to catch myself having those moments where I'm like, Erica, 20 minutes is great. Sometimes it's definitely better than nothing, but sometimes it might be better than 30 minutes. So don't talk yourself out of it. And now my physical health is so much better because I quit telling myself that if I didn't have a perfect workout, it wasn't good enough.
Yeah. And that story is reminding me of something that I went through recently where I just wasn't doing any movement whatsoever. And I ended up going to a gym and signing up for a trainer. And I was a little bit confused because my body wasn't changing. But I was like, so how does this work exactly? Like, do you start getting muscles or like, do I look like 20 years younger? Am I going to lose 20 pounds? Like, I was like, what's the tangible results here? Right. And so, and I just kind of went the next day and I just went the next day and I just went the next day. And I was like, I'm happier. And then I said, wow, I'm standing instead of sitting when my son is talking to me. That's because I was tired, right? Like I was like, and I had more energy, but not like that energy, which is what I kind of thought it was going to be like. But I just noticed that subtlety of it. And so it kind of speaks to what you're saying is that those little bits, but it must have been, now that I hear this story, the perfectionism was keeping me from even going. Because I was like, well, I don't want to be a marathon runner, so I'm not going to go. And I was like, and so then I didn't do anything. And I just was like, wow, I feel better. I just feel better. And now I keep going. I love it.
And if we take what we know about ourselves, we can start to look at how we're applying things. So for me, I used to love challenges. I used to be like, yes, 30 days of this or a week of that. We'll do all these things. And then I recognized, and so let's use the 75 hard as a challenge. Do you know about that?
Yeah.
Okay. So you have to do 2 45-minute workouts, one of them outside. You have to not drink alcohol. You have to stick to a very strict diet for the whole 75 days, no cheats. Take a picture of yourself and read 10 pages a day of a self-help book. That was damn near impossible. But I was like, yes, I'm going to do it. I'm all in. But then I'd be all in and then I'd be all out. I'd be like, oh, like, give me the tub of ice cream, all of these things. And so I have learned that challenges like that are not good for me because they'll go all in, but then I fall off and I go all out, which derails me even more instead of maybe just having a day where I do cheat and I do enjoy myself and then get right back to it. So it all kind of apply and recognize where you get yourself to a point and then keep yourself stuck and helps you move through it. So like I never do those challenges anymore because I know they're not good for me.
So speaking of the sticky floor, what I like about how you presented it in terms of the book to begin with is that women have these sticky floors, right? Like it almost just seems like, you know, and I talk a lot about generational healing and things that happen for women that are just, like you said, different. They're just different. So are some of these things, these habits of perfectionism, say, or, you know, whatever, they're sticky floors that we didn't create?
I think a lot of them are societal based. I do. I mean, when I think of motherhood and the unrealistic expectations that I've held myself to as a mother, I know that nobody is putting those on me. Like, in reality, nobody's putting those on me, but I see society around me and society sends me these messages and tells me how I need to be as a mother. And that kind of leads to perfectionism or imposter syndrome or burnout. And so, no, it isn't necessarily something that we have put on ourselves. But over time, it's all of these messages that we receive, whether it's from our upbringing and our parents or just society in general, that come to us and we internalize and then we act a certain way because of it.
Yeah. And I just like, I'm really excited about this because I see the end. I see the glass ceiling breaking, right? When we can take the shame out of it. I did not create this sticky floor. It gets created through many different ways, but there is a sticky floor that's holding me to the ground, and then start to work through that. And then all of a sudden, a lot of possibilities open up for us. And I'm very excited about it.
The more we talk about it, the less stigma there is around any of this.
Right, exactly.
I mean, that is what is so important, which is why I'm so excited about the book, because it's like when we address these things and we put them out there and other women who have been like feeling this way but keeping it inside can then raise their hand and say, me too, like that's a big deal.
Yeah. So you've touched on this. Obviously, the whole interview has been about your motivation for having that voice at the table, but I just want to directly answer that or ask that question. So why do you personally feel inspired to have a voice at the table?
I think it is such a powerful way to drive change. And I believe in helping people. I mean, that is a core value of mine. It's my why. Courage is one, growth is one, and that just all kind of comes together. And over all of my years in corporate and my story and my evolution, it's like I see how I can make the change. So for me, it is so powerful to have that seat and make change for the women who are coming up behind me.
Yeah, I can see that. You walk the talk. So thinking about that woman coming up behind you as we close out today's episode, can you, do you have any final words of advice, anything we haven't touched on that you want to share?
I think the biggest piece of advice that I have, and it is one of the questions that I ask every woman on my podcast, is what is the one thing that you wish you knew? And that is to know your worth. And I think so often women, myself included, try to fit the molds that society, that our partners, that our friends, that our parents set out for us. And we don't fit that mold for whatever reason. And we try so hard to fit that mold, and we value our worth based on if we fit that mold. And we don't feel good about it because we're all our own person and we're so unique. So pour into your own cup, into understanding who you are as a person and what unique values you bring to the world. Not just how much money you make or how many friends you have or how many likes on Instagram or anything like that, but your actual value, and really latch on to what your true worth is. And don't let any of that get attached, because all of those things can go away in an instant. But if you truly understand your worth, you will go so far.
Erica Anderson Rooney, thank you so much for being here. Follow her on LinkedIn. Her podcast is From Now to Next, and I will be interviewed for that podcast, so we'll be linking to that in the show notes as well. please let us know other ways that we can connect with you.
Instagram, TikTok, all the socials. But if you head to my LinkedIn, it's all there. That is where I'm most active, is on LinkedIn and Instagram. And I hope to see you there.
Oh, and we'll look out for your book.
And the book. Yeah. I'll definitely be on LinkedIn. So
yeah.
But
thank you.
Talking to you.
Thank you. Before you go, I have a question for you. Do you know how close you are to your next promotion? Really? Not what your boss has told you, not what you even believe to be true, but have you actually taken the time to sit down, take an assessment, review the 5 categories that it takes to get promoted into senior executive leadership positions, and decided where you fall in each category, and given yourself a ranking on a scale of 1 to 10 of how close you are to getting your next promotion? Have you done this? Well, now's your chance. If that feels interesting to you and you're like, hey, I want to know exactly how close I might actually be, or how far away you might be, and what it's going to take to get you even closer, then I invite you to take my promotability quiz. This is a quiz that I put together with practical tips that actually tell you where you're lacking and where you're winning. What are the areas that you actually need to improve, and not necessarily what your boss is telling you all the time, so that you can take concrete steps towards landing that next promotion and changing the face of the leadership table. Go to yourpromotabilityscore.com to take your free assessment today. Yourpromotabilityscore.com, and let me know how it goes.